This story tells about a young guy named David who is very fond of playing computer games. Recently, he spent day and night playing his favorite game and finally managed to complete it. It could be called his personal victory. Other players were shocked that there was someone who conquered this game. This game is called Defense of the Empire. It is considered incredibly difficult, but 10 years after its release, someone was able to successfully complete it. David believes that no matter how difficult the game is, it still exists in order to pass. This guy is a professional streamer. He plays only the hardest games and calls himself a typical nerd. His channel has more than 2 million subscribers who constantly watch him and donate. He was the first guy to pass this incredibly difficult game. During all this time, the audience became very attached to the heroes of the game. Now it is difficult for them to bear the fact that the game is ending. All the characters in the game except Lucas died in the final battle, and this hurts the fans. The objective of the final mission was to defeat the final boss, the princess of the lake who can't sleep. But after completing this mission, Lucas was left standing in the same position in front of the boss he killed. David looked at it and could not understand why nothing was happening. Despite the fact that Lucas was only a character in the game, he looks a bit upset now. Because of this, David also began to feel sadness, although he should have been happy because of the completion of the game. Some believe that David should receive a prize from the developers, because he was the first who was able to come and play. In any case, the guy is glad he did it. He enjoyed the process, and he did it for the fans. For 10 years, the developers have not created a sequel to the game, and there is no connection with them. But soon they heard about David and decided to write to him. When the boys saw what the director of the Empire's defense wrote to him, he was shocked. To begin with, he decided to thank the player, because during all this time it began to seem that no one would finish this game. The director said that looking at such successful players gives him hope. David was able to show his value and strengths. Now the director of the company wants him to help them. The streamer believed that all this was just a joke. He does not believe that the creator of the game was present on his streams. David tried to understand the director's words, but at that moment, he began to feel dizzy. He could not understand what was happening and thought that he was losing consciousness due to fatigue. Looks like he has been playing this game for too long. Followers should call for help as they are watching this live. David saw thanks for playing the game Defense of Empires. After that, his condition improved. It seemed to him that he saw the continuation of the game, but everything was not quite like that. When he realized what was happening, he was shocked, because now he has become a character in the game. At first, he did not understand what was happening around him and where the loud sounds he heard were coming from. Seeing that he was in mortal danger, the boy began to panic. He was not used to such situations, so he immediately fell to the ground and began to pray. The smell of gunpowder did not allow him to breathe calmly. He needs to get out of here immediately. He had already seen all these situations in the last 10 years, but now he became a part of this story. A real war was taking place before his eyes. Soon he saw that the enemy army was approaching him. Everything happened very quickly. There was no time to think, because every second you could be killed. So far, David did not understand anything. It seemed to him that it was just a dream. His emotions can be understood. Seeing this with your own eyes can make you faint from fear. After a few minutes, one of the soldiers saw him and ran to save him. He also called the boy Emperor. This warrior wanted to make sure that everything was fine with the Emperor. It was obvious that he was ready to give his own life for him. At first, David believed that an enemy soldier was approaching him and began to ask him not to kill him. At that moment, the soldier fell to his knees and began to beg for forgiveness for his aggressive behavior. He began to cry and said that he did not deserve to die and hoped that he would be left alive. David still could not understand anything. It seemed to him that this man had lost his mind. He approached him and asked him to calm down, and because of this, he did not notice the approaching danger at all. In a few seconds, a big explosion rang out. The shockwave threw David several meters back. David was not dead or seriously injured, although he was in quite a bit of pain. While he tried to understand what was happening, the warriors behaved very bravely and did everything to protect their territory. They tried to stop the enemy and prevent him from making a successful attack. Everything seemed very real, especially when someone was dying before David's eyes. While it was hard to watch, fear completely gripped this young lad. He was as if under the influence of hypnosis. It was noticeable that he was not used to such stress. Before his eyes, the arms and legs of the soldiers were torn off. Soon he saw how one of the men was left without a head. He looked at the wall in front of him and could not understand what was hiding behind it. Was it some kind of monster? He turned out to be completely right, because after a few minutes, he saw a huge spider in front of him. This big and ugly creature began to approach him. It is unlikely that this spider wants to make friends. David had to close his ears because of the loud explosions around him, but he has to do something because the spider is approaching. Seeing the approach of the monster, the warriors began to actively stop it, but it was almost impossible to do. David was so frightened that now his body completely refused to obey him. Seeing a large number of corpses and blood, the boy was too scared. It seemed to him that he was dreaming, because this cannot be in reality. This situation is too incredible. Maybe it could be hallucinations, because David drank too many energy drinks today. Maybe everything will end after the spider kills him. Then he can return to normal life. But of course, there are no guarantees that this is unreality, so it is better for him to start acting and run away immediately. At that moment, there was an incredibly brave warrior who intervened and protected him from the monster. This warrior with blonde hair fought like a real superhero. He acted quickly and very decisively. In just a few seconds, the huge spider was destroyed and the emperor was saved. David still could not recover from this shock, so this warrior began to calm him down. Perhaps the emperor has already realized that he is not seeing this character for the first time. In front of him is the real Lucas, the main character of Empire Defense, a game David has been playing for the past 10 years. Lucas guessed that the emperor suffered a head injury. Now he will surely have memory problems. But in any case, he is happy that the emperor calls him by his name. He served him all his life, but he never heard that he was called Lucas. David still could not recover and understand what was happening. He does not believe that the real Lucas is in front of him. Only a few seconds after the start, I finally guessed that I got into the game. Of course, at first these thoughts seemed too incredible to him, but he looked around and realized that this was really the defense of the empire. He had seen all these pictures during the last 10 years. Every day he played this game for at least 14 hours. Understanding this situation scared the boy even more. He began to tremble like a small child. Now he understands that he is in a difficult position because this is a game with an incredible level of difficulty. In this game, you can meet real giant monsters that are trying to tear your head off. In addition, there are constant conflicts, local battles, and wars. In this game, you have to constantly kill to stay alive because endless hordes of monsters are constantly trying to eat you. This game also has an incredible complexity of defense mechanics. Only true professionals have learned this art. In any case, now David must understand why he was inside and how it happened. While he was looking around and trying to figure out what to do next, Lucas turned to him again. He reminded that now they are being attacked by a serious enemy. This is an army of black spiders. Yes, they may lose their forward operating base now, but the spiders will be inactive after sunset. The sun will set below the horizon in about 30 minutes, so there's still a bit to go. While these 30 minutes are not minutes, Lucas asked the emperor to do everything possible in order to stay alive. David cannot understand why Lucas protects him and why everyone around him calls him the emperor. He will have to find an answer to all these questions, but for now it is better to think about his own health. Soon the battle was over, the sun had set below the horizon, and the spiders were no longer a threat. There were too many wounded people around, but Lucas and David managed to survive this battle. The emperor looked upset, probably because he saw the large number of victims of this battle. They were able to hold their territory and protect themselves from the spiders, although they did so at a very high price. David looked at his bodyguard and asked him what the number was and where they were. The glorious warrior replied that today is the last day of February of the 649th year according to the emperor's calendar. This is a forward operating base. This place is also called the Fortress City. It is located at the intersection of important roads. Tomorrow, the 1st of March, 649, the attack of monsters on the forward operating base. This is a very familiar situation in a familiar place. David has been to this location hundreds of times on the same date when he was training. I realized that his name in this game is Mark. He is also called Born Hater. It was noticeable that he was very unhappy to get this character. Probably he wanted to become someone else. The third prince of the empire with a sick head, the worst commander, because of which a large number of people died in the fortress city. And also this is the character who died the worst death according to the plot of the game. David is visibly upset that he was destined to play this particular character. To the personal house of the commander, it is night and there is a good opportunity to rest and gather strength. It seemed to David that he would lose his mind now. Empire Defense is a classic game with an emphasis on defense. There are many reasons why this game is known for being somewhat incredibly difficult. As in other games, the defense of the empire has its own levels of difficulty. In addition to the level called Hell, there is an Iron Man level that deliberately saves your progress. Combining both, the difficulty of the game was called Iron Man's Hell, and David is the only one who passed this mode. It seemed that he should not care at what point in the game he gets. He is confident in his abilities and that he will be able to find a way out. But this training is an exception to all the others, because the training is done in such a way that the player must lose no matter what. Because the story begins after Lucas single-handedly escapes from an invasion of monsters. According to the plot of this game, you can start hunting for an army of black spiders only after a year and a half of training. David can't figure out how he's supposed to defeat hundreds of these monsters in the first place. He tried to calm down and remember that he had already passed this game. So now it is necessary to gather all his knowledge into a heap and also remember his experience. This should help him through all these trials, although of course he is still in a difficult situation. I couldn't even believe that these black spiders are at high levels. Besides, there are more than 1,000 of them here, and he also noticed that the walls of the fortress are too weak and only guns can be used for defense. Now it is already clear that the chances of victory are very small. David must find a way with the highest probability of success. Playing the game with Iron Man mode makes it impossible to save progress and start over. Once you start having problems, it's game over, which is why it's important to plan every move you make several steps ahead. Playing this game for the last 6 months, David realized that there is always a way to survive in any situation. You have to find something with a better chance of survival, at least something you can be sure of. He soon found what he was looking for with the help of system settings and went outside to find Lucas. It turned out that this glorious warrior is constantly near his house and guards the Emperor. David ordered his closest bodyguard to immediately assemble the squad under his control. Lucas was a bit surprised. The look-alike Emperor meant the guard warriors. David had never summoned them before, but now it didn't matter because it looked like he had come up with something. The Emperor began to smile and said that he knew a way to defeat the black spiders. Lucas soon complied with his general's request and called the soldiers. Everyone gathered in one place to listen to the Emperor's instructions. When David looked at all of them, he saw familiar faces. They had become close friends for him during all these years of playing. In this room, you could see various warriors, even such beautiful creatures as lilies, know how to brutally kill enemies. A warrior named Ken looks angry. Maybe he is unhappy that he was called to the meeting so late. Damien, on the other hand, looks somewhat mysterious. He tries not to show too much emotion. Of course, they are all familiar to David. He played with these characters for thousands of hours, and also, of course, he had seen events where they died a huge number of times. Most of all, Damien looks upset today. It's even hard to look at him. Although he is quite a brave warrior, tears are visible in his eyes now. Lily knows the reason for his sadness. Today he is like that because he lost a friend in battle. David remembered that Damien was in such a state when David was training. This character had a strange status. And because of this, he died first. David could not use his skills. The Emperor decided to start by explaining tomorrow's roles for the characters. First, he turned to Lily. She is a fire sorcerer, the main attacker of this team, who knows how to constantly attack with powerful spells. He told the girl that she will be their shield, and her main task is to block spider attacks as a tank. Lily was displeased. She is a sorcerer and therefore does not defend herself well. But the Emperor did not listen to her and started talking to Ken. This guy works great with a shield and can keep opponents at a distance. He attracts attention, then takes damage with his body like a tank. The Emperor looked at this guy and ordered him to sneak into the opponent's territory tomorrow and create hell there. Now it's time to talk about the most upset character. Damien knows how to heal others. This is a very important class in the game. But now it doesn't matter because from this moment on, the Emperor orders him to be the shooter in the squad and shoot at the most important targets. Well, of course, it's time to talk about Lucas. He has to command the soldiers and support the front line. Hearing these instructions from the Emperor, the soldiers were excited and tense, although no one said anything. David asked them to comment on his instructions, and it was at this point that Ken couldn't take it anymore and started screaming. He said that this crap can't be called a plan, and he doesn't believe that the Emperor is really serious about it. Ken believes that the Emperor dragged them into a dangerous situation through a detachment of ordinary soldiers and still continues to talk all kinds of nonsense. Of course, all this really looks like a delusion, but you have to remember that this is a location that cannot be passed by standard methods. So, to pass this crazy location, you also have to become crazy. And that's exactly what David plans to do. He decided not to back down from his plan and said that Ken had no right to talk like that to the Emperor's son. Seeing the angry look of the Supreme Commander, Ken became visibly nervous. He began to apologize to the Emperor. This is exactly what David expected. He understands that he must be a real boss for the soldiers. When David came up with this plan, he understood that this idea was too risky and crazy. So in order to make these glorious warriors follow his orders, he must do something. If he does not show rigidity and confidence in his own ideas, they will not listen to him. David took out his sword and struck Lila so hard that it seemed that he had completely lost his mind. He looked at the soldiers and said that each of them must fulfill all the tasks that he will set before them. He found himself in the body of a real psychopath. So he decided to adopt his behavior, even though it looks crazy. Now, even Ken understood that the prince really lost his mind. He probably doesn't understand how valuable the sorcerer is. It is difficult to go into battle knowing that you are being controlled by such a person, but David is counting on this. After he struck Delilah with his sword, a fire started to form at the place of the injury. The warriors were surprised. Even Damien forgot his sadness and carefully watched these events. David smiled. There is no doubt that this is exactly what he was waiting for. His plan worked. It is not known why the developer added this, but all the starting characters have a hidden technique. The hidden technique is completely opposite to the roles of these warriors. David knows that Lily was wounded with a sword in her childhood. This happened when a horde of goblins attacked her village. After that incident, she received the Fire Skin skill. Fire Skin allows you to defend against physical attacks by turning your body into fire, as long as you have enough mana. The main damager's tank skill is always cool, but there was no way to use this technique in the game. In reality, everything is completely different. David decided to squeeze everything out of this technique in order to win the battle. Of course, he understands that this is a location that cannot be passed, so he must invent something special in order to succeed. Whoever made him fall into this game should now take a closer look because David has decided to go through this game again and then get revenge for this prank. David apologized for his method of evidence. Lily immediately forgave him, but could not understand how he found out about it. The Emperor replied that it did not matter and then looked mysteriously at Ken. He knows that this legendary warrior was a petty thief as a child, grew up in a poor family in which there was almost no food and opportunities. It was probably difficult for him to become a knight, but on the other hand, real heroes grow up in such conditions. It doesn't matter how David knows all this about them. The only thing that matters is how to use their skills. This is called the thief method. Now Ken can become invisible at any time he wants to avoid unnecessary attention to himself. He must confirm his technique right now, or the Emperor will have to use force again. The knight was very frightened and asked him to stop and confirmed that he really knows how to get up invisibly. This is great news because now it is clear that Ken will be able to easily fulfill tomorrow's order. After that, it's time to talk about Damien. He should also have a hidden technique because he is the most important person in this plan. The Emperor approached Damien and said that he knew that the boy had incredibly good eyesight. That's why he was able to see the death of his friend so clearly. It was hard for Damien to think about it. His memories of this situation were too fresh. He and his friend were from the same city and also grew up together in an orphanage. In the heat of battle, this noble warrior gave his life to save Damien. Now the warrior is crying and cannot understand why the Emperor brought them here, why he hurts them so much. He wants to understand what goal David is pursuing. Are the cheap lives of soldiers nothing more than a toy for him? He asked David to bring back his best friend. David asked the boy to calm down and admitted that he had the right to blame the Emperor or even to insult him. But David is sure that his friend Van sacrificed his life for Damien, so now you can't sit here and wait for death. He has no right to give up the life that his friend died for just because he risked dying because of a stupid commander. David is sure that Damien should grab any strings and definitely take revenge for his friend. It is necessary to destroy these terrible and cruel spiders, get out of here alive, and show that the act of his friend was not a mistake. Damien really wants to avenge his friend, and also really wants to kill the Emperor because of his anger. The other soldiers were shocked to hear such words from their comrade. It seemed that such words could be said to a prince. But this is exactly what David wanted to hear. The impression is that everything is going exactly according to his plan. He promises that if they can actually get out of here alive, Damien will be the one to take his life whenever that happens. Lucas could not believe that he was hearing such words from the Emperor. He tried to intervene in the conversation, but in the event of failure, they are still doomed to death. If this happens, David will allow Damien to take his own life to confirm his words. He is even ready to swear by the honor of the imperial family. David wants this talented warrior to carry out his orders for at least one day. That should be enough. Sometimes hatred has to be used as a motor with the help of his experience. David knows when to do it. He does not care that all this hatred is directed against him because he knows how to direct hatred in the right direction. He's not going to make excuses. It was because of his mistakes that their army was almost completely destroyed. But if the warriors follow his plan for tomorrow, they will be able to drive these spiders from their land. They will have at least a minimal chance of victory, so he asked them to do everything as he says. Tomorrow finally came and his entire squad stood by him. The battle that awaits them will be incredibly difficult. David has no choice but to risk everything in order to taste victory. The other soldiers are worried about their emperor, but David asked them not to be distracted and to do everything they were told. As we know, spiders are active during sunlight, so they decided to attack from early morning. The emperor's plan is quite simple. While the other team members buy time, they have to find the queen who gives orders to the spiders. After that, it remains to make the last maneuver, to blow up her stinking head with this weapon. Having removed the restrictions, they will also strengthen the magic power. Now this weapon must destroy the queen. The only problem is the location of the enemy. It is almost impossible to spot the queen from such a great distance. Human eyes are incapable of such things. David decided to create a map of the area. From the very morning, he looks quite confident, which is strange because the guy should know that this mission was impossible to complete in the game. He is confident because he understands that his character's best skill is card making. This Prince of the Emperor, though insane enough, still has his strengths. He is able to see the entire area in the form of a mini-map, although this character's other abilities are quite weak. He hoped to see the location of the boss, but realized that the queen is not here at all. The problem is that the main goal of the mission is the Spider Queen, but she is not visible on the map. The strongest knight of the Empire is already ready to fulfill his mission. Ken has been preparing for this since the morning. Before that, he had received all the stamina elixirs left in this building from the Emperor. Ken must go outside and attract the attention of the spiders, although this mission will be very difficult to cope with. Each of the soldiers of the special unit feels excitement. Lily is constantly trembling from the very beginning of the day. She has too unpleasant a role. In case of penetration of spiders into the territory, she must use the technique of skin from fire and block the entrance. While the girl gathers her strength and prepares for the ordeal, Lucas orders all the soldiers to take their positions. Today, the continuation of the deadly battle awaits them, and every second could be the last of their lives. Of course, when you are led by such a legendary warrior as Lucas, it adds optimism. Even despite the considerable strength of the opponent, Lucas told the soldiers that they must hold out for the maximum amount of time and give the Emperor a chance to defeat the Queen. He looked at the Emperor and understood that his expression meant that everything was ready to begin. Lucas probably did not see what happened a little later because David began to panic when he did not see the Queen on the map. The battle has begun. Everyone is acting according to the plan, so you have to quickly come up with a way to find the Queen. The spiders have felt what hellfire is from the very beginning. The warriors dream of revenge for their friends who died yesterday. Lucas was showing the Emperor that everything was going according to plan, and he was doing his job well. This legendary warrior does not understand that the plan is close to failure due to the fact that the location of the Queen is unknown. You have to keep calm. The goal of the training is not to destroy the boss, so it is not surprising that it is not shown on the map. Most likely the Queen will appear after a full-scale attack. This is quite logical. Spiders have everything to be confident in their own abilities and not to be afraid of unpredictable situations. David decided to call Damien for help. Let us remind you that this guy has incredible vision. He pointed his finger forward and asked him to understand what was happening there. Damien replied that he sees spiders sitting and doing nothing. It seems that they have a day off. David is sure that the Queen must be among them. Probably they stayed to protect her. Damien looked more closely and saw a monster with the upper part of a man and the lower part of a spider. David immediately began to smile. He is an experienced player, so he knows that this is exactly what the Queen is. He is sure that there is no need to be afraid of this disgusting monster because soon it will be destroyed due to the impact of a powerful cannon. Charging the cannon with mana is almost complete. Everything is ready to use this infernal weapon. David looked at Damien and asked him to adjust the weapon so that it would hit the Queen. The warrior immediately felt incredible pressure and responsibility for his actions. In such moments, you are always incredibly worried. He is not sure that he will be able to cope with this task because he has never done this before. The Emperor approached him, put his hand on the boy's shoulder, and assured him that he had a chance to miss. David was ready to take all the responsibility on himself. Even if he can't hit the target, it's still okay, so he shouldn't worry. The responsibility always rests with the commander because soldiers only do what they are ordered to do. All Damien has to do is pull the trigger and remember that he is avenging his friend Van. After hearing this motivational speech, Damien gathered courage and prepared to attack. Now he was no longer thinking about the excitement and potential failure, but only dreamed of revenge for his friend. David hopes that now everything will work out and they will be able to send these spiders to Satan. A cannonball is formed from mana. If this attack hits the queen accurately, it should turn into a stake. It was so powerful that Damien thought he would destroy not only the queen, but half the army as well. Soon there was a big explosion. It can be compared to the explosion of an atomic bomb. Now it remains only to make sure that the target has been hit and the Black Spider Queen is destroyed. One of the scouts confidently declared that they hit the center of the gathering of monsters, so everything is great. The warriors congratulated Damien for a great shot. If it really helps win the war, then he will become a living legend. Soon he was telling them about how he came to this success. Probably a little later, he will write a book about it. All this is done with the help of his vision skill. It appeared due to a god's mistake, an abnormal eye that allows you to always hit the target. In the game, he was a character who could not hold a weapon in his hands. But today, everyone saw his power. At first it seemed that the victory was already in the pocket, but a little later it became clear that this was not the case at all. In theory, after the death of the queen, the spiders should have started to flee, but they continued to move forward anyway. Seeing this, the soldiers began to panic. Of course, they understand that this is not at all according to plan. David decided to see for himself and try to guess what was happening. Soon he saw a large echelon of spiders going straight to the city fortress. Taking a closer look, he realized that the Queen of Spiders is still alive and leading her army to victory. So it turned out that they did not kill the queen, which means that the plan has failed so far. David must think very quickly and clearly and find a way to achieve the goal at any cost. He looked at the spiders and tried to understand where they were going and what their plan was. Now the lives of all the people around him depend on his actions. An incredible responsibility rests on his shoulders. Looking more closely, it became noticeable that the spiders were approaching the artillery unit. The queen must have sent out her orders very quickly. No wonder, because this spider is really at a high level. We almost forgot that Ken is performing a very important mission by order of the emperor. Now this knight is starting to have serious problems because he has only one, the last elixir left. He began to panic and did not understand what to do. Maybe now is the time to run away very quickly. He was scared and tried to find the right solution. It's hard to be surrounded by spiders even when you are a strong knight. At that moment he saw a strange glow and tried to understand what was happening. He still could not see anything, but he hoped that everything was going according to the emperor's plan. It turned out that it was the second explosion with the help of a cannon that shoots mana. Although the target was hit, it had no effect as the spiders continued to move forward. This means that the queen is still alive. It is hard to believe that she is not killed by the shots of such a powerful weapon. Even the cannon is not strong enough to defeat this monster. So you have to invent something else. From the very beginning, the queen of the black spiders should have died from one maximum 2 shots. As a result, she's not that strong against battle-level monsters. But David doesn't have any information about her. Maybe she has special skills that allow you to destroy others or improve characteristics. If it cannot be destroyed, then it is not clear how exactly to act in such a situation. The cannon cannot fire all day without stopping. The mana level must be maintained at a stable level. In total, they can fire 5 times. That is, there are still 3 charges left. Hearing this, David realized that he had serious problems. Only 3 shots to achieve success. He has no other choice but to destroy her in these 3 opportunities. But for this, he must be very precise. In addition, he began to understand that Damien's extraordinary eyes had some side effects. The situation is really getting out of his control. At night, he thought he had planned the perfect plan, but now it turns out that it is not so at all. The only thing that saves him is that the walls of the fortress cope well with their task. Soon, they noticed that the fighter was already near their fortress. That's what they call a large spider trying to break inside. At the time David played this game, such a spider did not exist, so this is some kind of innovation. He ordered all the soldiers to point their weapons at the fighter in order to prevent it from entering inside. Hundreds of shots could be heard every second. All the soldiers tried to fulfill the emperor's order. Although they were shot and reached the target, the fighter continued to move forward. Over time, it became apparent that it is almost impossible to stop it. So a meeting with this monster is inevitable. The walls of the huge fortress could not withstand this blow. This spider turned out to be too big. He sacrificed his health in order to launch an army of spiders inside, and he succeeded. Now the situation is out of control. There is very little time left to make the right decisions. Chief Warrior Lucas was not confused and ordered the soldiers to raise their weapons and go down to the first floor. The emperor also tried to encourage the others and asked them to gather their strength and keep shooting at the queen. He explained that there is a large army below that is protecting them and trying to give them extra time, so they have no right to betray them. Before these monsters get to the artillery squad, you have to destroy this queen. With the last of his strength, Demian continued to find the target with his gaze and attack it. Each time the warriors confirmed hitting the Spider Queen, but she continued to live. David ordered the cannon to be reloaded immediately for the next shot. He made the soldiers work as fast as possible. Speed is needed because the army from below cannot hold on forever, even taking into account that Lucas is fighting for them. Today this warrior confirms his legendary status. His attacks are almost unstoppable. He acts like a true hero and orders his men to protect the artillery, and also not to forget to protect the Imperial Prince. No matter how skilled a commander he is, but the number of enemies is too large compared to the army of people. Not everyone has the same training as Lucas, so a large number of losses is almost guaranteed. The ground on the territory of the fortress was covered with blood. The worst thing is that this blood belongs to people. The number of victims continued to increase every minute, and David still did not know what to do. When he played this game in his room, he never guessed that all these people were real. Death is not just a number accompanied by incredible screams and terrible smells. If everything continues like this, then they will not have time to kill the queen because soon the spiders will crawl towards them. David tried to understand what exactly he should do. He must immediately find a way out of this situation, but time passes and this method does not come to him. Such moments an unprepared player can start to panic. He was very lucky to have by his side very brave soldiers who are ready to give their lives for the sake of others. He heard that some madman started calling monsters to him. Is this self-sacrifice? Looking more closely, the emperor saw a Ken. This knight knocked out the last bottle of elixir and prepared for battle. He told the monsters that he is the strongest knight of this empire and is ready to show them his true strength. This was really enough for the spiders to turn their attention to him and forget about the others. The main purpose of this insane plan is to distract the enemy from the fortress. Any distraction is needed to give the emperor extra time. So Ken is doing the right thing. He remembers his stealth skills and hopes that they will save his life. After activating the thief survival technique, he becomes almost invisible. This plan really looks very good. But after looking at Ken's system parameters, the emperor saw that he had no health. Only an experienced player knows that you always need to have a reserve of health to use the technique. In the last seconds of his life, Ken thought that he should not have trusted the emperor. But now it was too late to draw conclusions. Although he gave extra minutes of life to the fortress, he paid too high a price for it. The prince lost one of the most valuable warriors in his army. Although the knight was far away, his screams before death could be heard very clearly as the spiders tore pieces from his body. This is what the wrong commands of the commander lead to. They cost the precious lives of other people. All these people have their own stories. They all have relatives and loved ones whom they protect. The sacrifice of this glorious warrior forced other soldiers to believe in themselves and launch a large-scale counter-offensive. They all lose their lives because of the emperor's order, even though his plan doesn't work at all. At first, David thought that it was all his fault, but then he realized that it was he who was killing them now. Playing this game, he used the knights as decoys whenever necessary. This infernal game was designed in such a way that in order to get the desired result, it was necessary to sacrifice others. David was always happy to sacrifice others and never doubted any act he did. But only now he understood the meaning of all this, understood that any death is accompanied by pain that tears the soul. He ordered the monsters to stop immediately, but instead only attracted their attention. These vile, hideous creatures never stop. Ordinary screams only encourage them. They got out of hell, so they understand only the language of power. It is in this language that you have to talk to them. Lucas understands this better than others. Don't forget that with the help of this player, David passed the game. This information is already enough to understand that Lucas can be the key to victory. Lucas easily destroyed these monsters and showed the emperor that it was possible. The only option to make them stop is a show of force and total destruction of the spiders. If this is not done, all the people in this territory will die today, and this cannot be allowed. The cannon was loaded for the fourth shot, but it turned out that there were problems with the Demian. Now it becomes clear what is the problem with his skill. He cannot use it without rest. Although blood flowed from his eyes instead of tears, this desperate boy still agreed to shoot again. He tried to focus and hit the target. Maybe this time it would work. The Queen of Spiders began to scream when she saw that a powerful supply of mana was approaching her. The explosion was really impressive. It turned out that it hit her clearly in the head. But later everyone realized that even such a powerful and well-aimed explosion was not enough to destroy this hellish creature. At such moments, faith in success is lost. It is difficult to maintain the fighting spirit of the army when the plan does not work. Their attacks are accurate, but not enough to destroy the queen. One of the soldiers said that if they fired again, the cannon might explode, so they had to admit defeat and surrender. These words could have angered the emperor, but he did not answer. Was this really the end? The cannon is on the verge of destruction and the defense line of the fortress is completely broken. If you pay attention to Demian, who is responsible for the accuracy of the shot, it is immediately clear that he can no longer open his eyes. It really does look like the end, but it's hard to believe that they don't have any hope left. However, after a few seconds, this hope appeared because one of the soldiers noticed something interesting. Looking more closely, he noticed that after the last explosion, the Spider Queen had lost her skin. This scout deserves especially warm words to his address. Even in such a situation, he remained faithful to his role until the end. If you shoot the queen again, you can destroy her. But there is one problem. The scout did not pay attention to the fact that something similar to a concentrated explosion of poison was approaching them, so fast that even Lucas did not have time to react and save the emperor. This explosion was really very strong. Some died immediately, but David remained between life and death. Everything around was immediately destroyed. Not only the cannon, but also the hope of victory. David felt dizzy in his head and could not regain consciousness. Only distantly, he could hear the sounds of Lucas. He tried to concentrate and get up, but this explosion took a lot of health from him. Only after some time, he finally opened his eyes and realized that Lucas still managed to save his life. Strangely enough, even in a situation where this warrior almost died due to injuries, he still worries about the emperor's health. David got up very quickly and said that his condition is normal, and now we need to think about the condition of Lucas. Analyzing his body, the emperor quickly saw that Lucas had lost a large amount of blood. This warrior did not complain or cry. He remained courageous and decided to remember the events of 20 years ago. It is obvious that David cannot remember this. He is a player who took someone else's body, so he has no memories of the emperor and Lucas. Lucas decided to remember the emperor's words when he appointed him as his personal bodyguard. Then the prince said that even if he could not become emperor, he would become the coolest person in the world. Likewise, his personal bodyguard should strive to become the best. Although these words were input when they were only children, they had a great impact on Lucas. He has not forgotten these words even to this day. Lucas looked at the prince and said that he trusted him incredibly. Even now he trusted him more than ever before. After that, his body could not withstand the strain and he fell to the ground in his own blood. David looked at him and hoped that this was only a temporary loss of consciousness. Lucas has to live on. He's the main character and savior of this world, so he can't die in a place like this. The emperor must put an end to all this. Now they must be under the artillery unit. It is not known how long he was unconscious, but it is noticeable that other soldiers of the artillery are nearby. Taking a look, he noticed that they escaped fatal injuries, but the cannon was seriously damaged. This whole situation seems a bit strange. Why were they all able to escape, and where are the spiders? David was trying to find answers to these questions until suddenly he heard Lily calling him. It turned out that it was this determined girl who held back all these monsters, so this is not the end. She hopes that their victory is still possible, although it is unlikely that she will be able to see this victory with her own eyes. David tried to approach her and help, but she asked him to stop and assured her that she could block the entrance for now. Of course, this cannot last forever. Soon the monsters will surround the fortress and break through the walls. Now they have too little time, so she asks the emperor to hurry. He's responsible for her and everyone else, so he can't just let them all die like that. This speech really affected him. He realized that he should act like a real man and not pay attention to injuries. David ordered the soldiers to immediately repair the cannon and load it with the last gun. The military reminded him that if this cannon was fired again, it would explode because its limit had already been exhausted. David replied that if this is not done, they will still die from the paws of these nasty spiders. They have to take risks because only by taking risks can you get everything. You have to do it even if you have to burn alive. Soon the cannon was fixed, but the problem is that nothing can be seen from here, so they can't see the Spider Queen. The gun mount is lost, so you have to hold it with your own hands. If you don't have teeth, you have to chew food with your gums. David replied that there is no need to aim. Damien just needs to shoot. There is no exact description of exactly how Damien's aiming technique works, but as long as he shoots, he will always hit the target. All they have left is to believe in success. so he approached the boy and asked him to shoot one last time. Damien's eyesight is very poor. He can hardly even make out the Emperor's face, although he is standing a few meters away. David asked him to gather strength for the last shot. Damien replied that he did not see the point in this. He believes that no matter what they do, the result will not change. They cannot defeat this enemy. David tried to assure the boy that if they hit again, the monster would die. Damien had been implying something else all along. Even if he pulls the trigger one more time and the queen actually dies, nothing will change. Half of his closest friends are already dead. Even if you destroy all the enemies, you still can't get your friends back. If he didn't work hard, if he didn't try, this world continues to take away the people closest to him. Now he has completely lost his faith. He doesn't want to anymore, and he doesn't want to live in this world anymore. He wants to end it all. Calm and motivational talks don't help much in such a case, so David started yelling at this guy. Does he think that this world is really too cruel? Does he think that if he defeats the monsters, life will continue to be hell? He grabbed him by the cloak and said that this is absolutely true, but it is necessary to emphasize other nuances. If there are levels of difficulty in this world, it's incredibly hellish, especially in Iron Man mode, where you can't save progress. He does not recognize that this place is absurdly unfair. You will never be here, and nothing will be according to your wishes. Life is really very cruel. We live surrounded by a landscape that devastates the soul. But does he want to give up? Does he want to lie and wait for his own death? Is this a worthy behavior? David is sure that they should continue to fight until they die, which is exactly what he wants to do. The prince will fight and come up with new strategies until the very end. He doesn't care how unfair this world is. If Damien really decided to end the fight, he should take this sword and cut his own throat right now. If he really has the courage to do it, no one will stop him. But if he wants to choose a different path and continue the fight for good, he must help destroy this hellish monster. He can no longer look back at his dead friends. The only one he needs now to continue is David as a commander. Damien is now the most important chess piece. You can even say that he is the key to victory. The Emperor needs to get his hands on this key. Now he has even unlocked a new ability, the Irrepressible Commander. He gave his warrior an order and said that Damien must stand up and fight for his friends and destroy this monstrous face of a monster. After such a motivational speech, he had no choice but to carry out this order. They began to prepare to use the cannon one last time, but it is necessary to cool this weapon. In order to shoot, you have to hold it in your own hands, but now it is very hot. David said he didn't care. He'd rather burn alive than go to hell and burn there. Damien said that he can hardly see anything and he can't feel his hands at all. David smiled and said that it was normal. He would still hit the target. The cannon turned out to be incredibly hot. Holding it in one's own hands was even worse than looking at the new Captain America. In any case, David had no other choice. It is better to lose his hands than to die from the spider's claws. The warriors understood that they must help the prince. Otherwise, they will not respect themselves. This scene can truly be considered legendary. These men are in incredible pain, but keep going forward. They should have prepared their weapons for firing, but they saw that a fighter was approaching to meet them. It was decided to shoot right now. They have no more time to wait. Now we will see the outcome of this incredible story. Maybe it will bring tears to someone's eyes. From this last shot, the cannon did not crack. It was really something very large scale. Although Damien saw almost nothing, his technique should work. After the explosion, everyone fell to the ground and remained completely without strength. They are now almost completely surrounded by spiders. In a few seconds, they will be eaten like crab sticks, unless, of course, Damien hit the target directly. From the very beginning, this mission was almost impossible. It was necessary to shoot at the enemy, which cannot even be seen from the bottom of the destroyed front. It seemed that there was absolutely no chance of success, but it turns out that there are always chances. The weapon flew straight towards the Spider Queen, ignoring the height and long distance. This shot also ignored hundreds of thousands of other monsters as it approached its special target. As if following a chosen path, he flew towards the queen, who was screaming in surprisingly. This shot hit her head exactly. Without the slightest deviation, it was enough to tear her head like a watermelon. David remembered completing this mission when he first started being a streamer. Then he could not explain how he passed this task. His audience asked him how exactly he did it, but now the boy cannot remember what he answered then. When he opened his eyes, he immediately felt incredible pain, so he tried to get up. At that moment, he heard that he was advised to calm down and spend more time on rest. It turned out that Damien was able to improve his condition with the help of magic, but the burns are still very strong, so it takes more time to recover. It turned out that this was what Lily was saying. David slept for 3 days. She had already begun to think that he would never wake up given the recent events. He gave up a lot of health to finally defeat the army of spiders, and it looks like he succeeded. The girl said that thanks to the command of the Emperor, after the last shot, the Spider Queen finally died. Without it, the spiders froze in place and did not move, so the fortress stood, and the people won. Now it's time to clear the debris, help of course, bury the dead. Also, no one forgot to burn the bodies of the spiders. Now these guys never woke up. With the cleaning of the territories, everything was quite clear. It turned out that David received severe burns on his hands, shoulders, and neck. Lily said that after he recovers and returns home, he better go to church. Of course, even after full recovery, some scars will remain, but this is a much more modest price than life. Now it's time to talk about Lily. She had incredible injuries, but she somehow survived. When she ran out of mana, the spider injured her back, but when the queen died, no one attacked her again. Probably due to nerve damage in her back, her lower body will no longer be able to move. David did not even know what to answer to this. It seems as if he froze on the spot from shock. Lily asked him not to worry and said that she was very glad to be alive. Among the survivors, there are 5 gunners: Lucas, Damian, Lily, and David, that's all. So in total, only 9 people remained, although at the time of the beginning of the last battle, there were several hundred of them. It was very difficult for David to look at this girl who will never be able to walk. Maybe there was another way. He also remembered Ken's death, at which point he began to think even more that there was another tactic that he hadn't noticed. He is sure that there should have been a way to save at least one more person, because everyone's life is extremely valuable. Lily took his hand and explained that in this situation it was impossible to save everyone, so he did everything he could. Of course he brought the soldiers here. Let it be the Emperor Mark and not the real David. But he alone is responsible for the soldiers. No one could have thought that these monsters would move in droves after a few decades. That's why no one stopped the military company. That is why Lily asks him not to take these events to heart and to understand that it is not all his fault. At that moment, their conversation was stopped by a loud cry. Lucas came to see his emperor. All this time he was very worried because he thought that the emperor might die. Fortunately, everything turned out well. He hopes that no part of the emperor's body feels strange or he will immediately summon Damian. After that, David began to ask him questions. Did he also not escape serious injuries? It turned out that the main strength of Lucas is to be very cool, and he succeeds in this perfectly. Now the knight finished compiling the list of people who died during the battle. He also reported that not all bodies could be found. David found out that the corpses of the dead soldiers are on the northern mountain of the advanced operational base. As soon as he heard about it, he immediately decided to get dressed and go see, although of course Lily and Lucas tried to stop him. The emperor explained that all these people died under his leadership, so he must personally look after them. Soon they saw Damian. This guy is also here, and he seems to be fine. He was glad to see that the future emperor was finally awake and feeling well too. He said that his eyes are in good condition, since yesterday his vision began to return step by step. Now he can see normally again and is very happy about it. David had already learned that Damian helped heal the wounded in battle, walked around and used magic, although he saw almost nothing that day. He thanks him for his help. If he wants, he can get such a sum of money from the emperor that he will have enough for the rest of his life. But Damian has a completely different desire. He wants to know the origin of these monsters, who created them, when and why. He wants to understand this to ease his pain after losing his best friend named Van. That is why he wants to continue to follow the emperor and be close to him to find answers to all these questions. It was nice to hear not only David, but also Lucas, who was nearby all this time and listened to their conversation. The emperor replied that there is no problem in this. From this moment, Damian can continue to move with him. The time has come to honor the memory of those who died during the battle. Now David is sure that there was no better way, as well as the best strategy. There is nothing more stupid than regretting the past and trying to offer alternatives. The emperor chose a tactic and followed it to the end. He got the result. He paid a heavy price for responsibility for it. This responsibility will need to be shouldered in order to move forward. He ordered to take away the bodies of the dead and transfer them to another place, which is called the crossing. Every year, human losses reach a large number of thousands of people. This world where burial is more expensive than life. On the Westfield, he wants to build a large cemetery. During the game, he built a memorial object there. He said that the last day of February every year will be designated as a day to honor the heroes, but not just for them. It's a day for all the characters he's killed without a doubt hundreds of times through the game. It can be said that this is his kind of retribution, respect, and recognition of his past mistakes. David turned to Lucas and said that he would never fail again like he did before. He can no longer look at these bodies of people who gave their lives to fulfill his order. Now it's time to go back to their main base, and of course draw conclusions from all this. All of them should analyze their past mistakes in order to act much more coherently and productively in the future. The system notified that the location was cleared. Now David can check the available rewards. After they left their operational base, they have been moving north for 3 days to a base called the Intersection. It is quite difficult for David to endure this long journey. He is too bored. During the game, this period could easily be skipped. Lucas said that soon they would be there and asked to wait a little longer. The system notified that the player must choose the class of his character. That is, an important decision must be made. After completing the training, he received the 5th level. It is at the 5th level that the player can choose his class. His starting numbers are too weak. David has problems with stamina as well as with other key characteristics. The most interesting thing is that even despite the increase in these characteristics, he can choose any class that is available in the game. He saw that there is a special class that is difficult to assign to any category. It is also called a hidden class. He also remembered the skill he got earlier, the Unstoppable Commander. Maybe that's the one you should choose. This technique makes it possible not to give up under any circumstances and also gives protection from mental attacks to all allies within a radius of 10 meters. But it may not be very useful in the early game. It is risky to choose a class about which there is no information. Soon, Lucas announced that they were approaching the crossing. Finally. This big main base is really nice looking. If they fought inside its walls, it would be harder for the spiders to get inside. They call the fortress built in the southern part of the country. It was built to stop the monsters that constantly crawled out of the Black Lake. At one time, this fortress was the largest and most important in the empire. But times change. The constant attacks of monsters in this area ended, so the army had to be redirected to another place. Due to the lack of an army, mercenaries, veterans who are preparing to retire, or newcomers without experience were hired to protect this fortress. For the mercenaries, neither their nationality nor their qualifications played a role. The empire simply needed human shields to support this front line. It turns out that life itself has lost its value, which is why restaurants, hotels, and banks began to appear here. 10 years later, this fortress turned into a full-fledged city, and after that, people stopped calling it a fortress altogether. Now this city is called a crossroads. It really impresses with its architecture and beauty. There was also another name that sounded like a mockery of mercenaries flying to their deaths, blinded by money like butterflies. For them, the city was called Suicide Street, or the City of Death. Looking through the computer screen, it seemed that this city was much smaller than it actually was. In any case, now David must understand that this is a city for which he will be responsible. Approaching the streets of the city, he felt how the air became much heavier. These disgruntled people can be understood, their newly appointed commander and lord barely making it back alive after losing his warriors. But David felt that something like this could happen, so he prepared something for them. Approaching the imperial chariot, the people saw something that looked like magic crystals. David deliberately made it visible. More than 400 black spider crystals, incredible jewels that have no price. Since the spiders were high-level monsters, these crystals were of very high quality, so it's clear that they were very precious. These stones are so expensive that for a while you can completely forget about money. David believes that he should get a reward for completing a difficult mission, but he also needs to remember to cooperate with the citizens. Now their trust in the Lord is almost at 0 level, but he is not a fool and knows how to increase this trust. Money is always ready to make a person forget about the past, and it is with the help of money that David plans to improve relations with citizens. Using the most effective way, he will buy their hearts, literally. Soon their journey was over. Lucas greeted the Lord on his arrival home. The house of the future emperor really impresses with its size and architectural solutions. Seeing this, it was hard to contain his surprise, because David did not expect to live here. Of course, it cannot be compared with the house in which he lived in real life. At that moment, the door of the house opened, and a strange guy began to approach him very quickly. He started shouting and thanking the Lord that the Lord was still alive and well. This boy couldn't figure out what to call him David. That's why the emperor allowed him to call him whatever he wanted. This servant was very worried that he would be left without his boss. Because of this, he was constantly nervous and ate almost nothing. This stupid guy, around whom you can smell the smell of a traitor, is called Ader. In the game, he is an NPC who controls the city. All the administrative tasks of the city are his problem. From the construction of facilities to the maintenance of systems, David must manage the city together with him. Ader brought David to the house and told him that he had already taken a hot bath and prepared dinner. Now the Lord can rest as much as he wants. He must recover his strength after a hard battle. David asked Lucas to check that all the soldiers rested and also reminded that Lucas should not forget about relaxation. Of course, Lucas wanted to continue guarding his emperor, but David assured that it was not necessary now. All these duties can be continued tomorrow. Instead of a smile on his face, Lucas was visibly upset. Ader constantly hinted at a relaxing hot bath. He was sure that all the fatigue would go away immediately, and it would also help to get rid of the smell of blood after the battle. David hasn't taken a bath in a long time. This trip has been really rough, so today he's going to relax 100%. He thanked Ader for his help and said that he can also rest today. Ader smiled and said in a low voice that it was incredible and called David a typical jerk. Does this NPC know the real name of David? Such a plot twist was hard to predict. That's all for today, guys. Please leave a comment for the next part. Thank you and see you on the next upload.